Hi everyone, back again. Acts. We're doing Acts chapter 21 and 22 today. Get out your, Bibles and a writing utensil, paper to jot down notes and questions that you may have throughout this video. I'm gonna try to keep the video short. Um, My videos normally run between 50 minutes to an hour, but I'm gonna try to get my videos to last at least 20 minutes. Like, try to cut down on the time. Um, but let's begin on chapter 21, Acts. Acts chapter 21. Okay. So Paul and his companions went out to sea. Sailed straight to Cos next day, rose then to Patara, went to Phoenicia, passed to the south of Cyprus, then to Syria. They landed in Tyre. Their ship had to unload cargo. They sought out disciples in Tyre, stayed with them 7 days. The Spirit urged Paul not to go to Jerusalem. When it was time to leave, they left, continued on their way. The disciples they stayed with, including their wives and children, accompanied Paul and his companions out of the city, went on a beach, knelt to pray. They said goodbye to each other, aboarded a ship, and returned home. They continued their voyage from Tyre, landed at Ptolemais. They greeted brothers and sisters in Christ, stayed with them for a day, left the next day, reached for Caesarea, stayed at the house of Philip the evangelist, one of the 7. He have 4 unmarried daughters who prophesied, and Philip the evangelist was one of the 7 chosen deacons to serve the early Christian church community in Jerusalem. They stayed there a number of days. A prophet named Agabus came down from Judea. He came to them, took Paul's belt, tied his own hands and feet with it, and said, "The Holy Spirit told him in this way, the Jewish leaders in Jerusalem will bind the owner of this belt and will bind the owner will bind the owner of this belt and will hand him over to the Gentiles." Everyone pleaded for Paul not to go to Jerusalem, but he said, "Why are you weeping and breaking my heart? I am ready not only to be bound, but also to die in Jerusalem for the name of the Lord Yeshua." When he could not be dissuaded, they gave up and said, "The Lord's will be done." And dissuaded means when you stop a person, when you stop a person from doing, when a person is not doing a particular course of action, like somebody said they dissuaded you from cooking, with like meaning like they just stop you from taking a particular or certain course of action. So in this case, the people that was with Paul, they could not stop him from doing what he wanted to do. So they gave up, and he wanted to go to Jerusalem, even though he was being warned by God not to go, but he wanted to go anyway. And so they was just like, pretty much like, well, just leave it in God's hands, because they couldn't force him to stay, so some things just left up to God. They started up to Jerusalem. Disciples from Caesarea went with them and brought them to the home of Manasseh, and for them to stay there. Manasseh was a man from Cyprus and one of the early disciples. They arrived at Jerusalem. Warm greetings from the brothers and sisters in Christ there. Next day, Paul and the rest of them went to see James, and all the elders were present. Paul greeted them, reported in detail what God had done among the Gentiles through his ministry. And Gentiles is non-Jews. Where people kind of like get confused at is that you think Gentiles is a certain color of people, and you think Jews is a certain color of people. But Jews or Jewish people don't have to be a particular color. However, the original Jews, the original Hebrew Israelites were black. However, there was a lot of European, like Roman Greek people who converted to Judaism and converted to Christianity, because before Christianity and Judaism, they was very much pagan in their beliefs. So you can have, Jewish people who are European. You can have Jewish people who are black. You can have Jewish people who are Asian. You can have Jewish people of every color, race, culture. It just depends on, it's a belief system. It's not a color or a race of people. Same thing with Gentiles. It's not a color or race of people. It's just a non-Jew. So a non-Jew could be anybody, if it's anybody who's not a Jew. But what I hate is how the European Jews now that's in the Israel they made in 1947, which is not the Israel of the Bible, but I don't like how they lie to people and try to make people think that they're the Jews of the Bible. And I'm like, no, you're not. You're Jewish. You follow the religion, the belief system. Nobody's denying that, but you don't lie to people and tell people that you are the Jews of the Bible, because that's gonna make God mad. If you really believe in God and you really worship him and want to do right by him, you tell the truth. You don't lie. You can't steal somebody's birthright. You can't steal somebody's, you can't steal what belongs to somebody else. It's not a Jacob Esau, type of thing where you can just go up and just steal somebody's birthright. It's not how it is, because that's not what God said, But anyway, I don't want to get too much into that. Also, the music in the background is just to make this Bible study go a little bit more easier, to have some soothing music in the background. I'm playing a winter jazz soundscape on YouTube. So it got commercials in it, so every now and then you may see me stop to skip over the commercials. Let's see. Where we at? So anyway, they arrived at Jerusalem. They had a warm greeting from the brothers and sisters there. Next day, Paul and the rest of them went to see James, and all the elders were present. Paul greeted them, reported in detail what God had done among the Gentiles through his ministry. They praised God. James and the elders warned Paul that some Jews were saying that he was teaching Jews who lived among the Gentiles to turn away from the teachings of Moses, saying not to circumcise their children or live according to the Jewish customs. They told him to go with them they told him to go with 4 men among them who made a vow. They told Paul to join in their purification rites, pay their expenses so they can shave their heads. They said then everyone would know that the reports about him are not true. They said they wrote to the Gentile believers to not eat food sacrificed to idols, to not eat blood. Do not eat food sacrificed to idols, food that's got blood in it, don't eat meat of strangled animals, and no sexual immorality. Paul went with the 4 men and did as he was told by James and the elders. When 7 days were nearly over, some Jews saw Paul at the temple. Jews from the province of Asia. They stirred up the crowd, seized them, saying, "This is the man who teaches against our people, our law in this place." They said he brought Greeks into the temple and defiled this holy place. They seen him with a man named Trophimus, the Ephesian, in the city, and assumed Paul brought him into the temple. So they was really big on they did not want non-Jews. So the Greek was a non-Jew. So they did not want non-Jews into their church or temples and stuff. I mean, these people was already filled with hate, and they didn't know the love of God. Like, you don't treat people like that. But people still do it today. So the whole city, came running from all directions, seizing Paul, dragged him from the temple. Immediately, the gate shut. They were trying to kill Paul. News reached the commander of the Roman troops. The whole city of Jerusalem was in an uproar. So the commander with some officers and soldiers ran to the crowd. The rioters saw the commander and the soldiers and stopped beating Paul. The commander arrested Paul, bound him with 2 chains, asked him who he was and what he'd done. The crowd shouted different things, so the commander couldn't get the right answer. So he ordered Paul to be taken into the barracks. And barracks is a building or group of buildings used to house soldiers. So Paul was to be taken where the soldiers were. I guess it was like an extra measure of protection. When Paul reached the steps, the mob was so violent, Paul had to be carried by the soldiers. The crowd shouted to get rid of him. So God was telling him not to go to Jerusalem. He wanted to go to Jerusalem anyway. So this is what is happening. But, even though God told him not to go, God's like, okay, well, I'm going to still protect him. So God is using the commander and the soldiers of the city to protect Paul from the people, from the Jews in the city that want to stir up trouble against him. As the soldiers were about to take Paul into the barracks, Paul asked the commander, may he say something to him? The commander replied, the commander asked, did he speak Greek? And isn't he the Egyptian who started a revolt that led 4,000 terrorists out into the wilderness some time ago? Paul said he is a Jew from Tarsus in Cilicia, a citizen of no ordinary city. Paul asked for the commander to let him speak to the people, and the commander gave him permission. Okay, chapter 22. Paul spoke in Aramaic, which made the crowd quiet. Paul told them that he is a Jew, born in Tarsus of Cilicia, brought up in the city, studied under Gamaliel, thoroughly trained in the law of his ancestors, zealous for God as many of them, persecuted the followers of the way to their death, arrested men and women, threw them into prison, as the high priest and all the council can testify. He says he got letters from them to their associates in Damascus, went there to bring those people as prisoners to Jerusalem to be punished. And so let's go back a little. So he said that he was this man named Gamaliel taught him, all that he needed to know, like a mentor to him. So he studied under Gamaliel. Gamaliel was a Jewish teacher, a leader in the Sanhedrin. And the Sanhedrin was a court of Jewish law that tried cases of religious and worldly significance. The word zealous means someone who has a focused desire characterized by passion and commitment to something. And in his case, religion, belief in God. And the way was the name used by early Christians before Christian was used. So pretty much the way was just early Christians. So Paul says, as he came near Damascus, a sudden bright light from heaven flashed around him. He fell to the ground and heard a voice say, Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? He said, Paul's name was Saul, but it got changed to Paul. So Paul said, who are you? The voice said, I am Jesus of Nazareth, whom you are persecuting. Paul said his companions saw the light, but they did not understand the voice of him who was speaking to Paul. Paul asked, what shall he do? And God said, get up, go into Damascus. There you will be taught all that you have been assigned to do. His companions led him by the hand into Damascus because the brilliance of the light had blinded him. A man named Ananias came to see him. He was a devout observer of the law and highly respected by all the Jews living there. He stood beside Paul and said, Brother Saul, receive your sight. At that very moment, he was able to tell Ananias. Ananias said, the God of our ancestors has chosen you to know his will and to see the righteous one and to hear words from his mouth. You will be his witness to all people of what you have seen and heard. And now what are you waiting for? Get up, be baptized, and wash your sins away, calling on his name. when he returned to Jerusalem and was when Paul returned to Jerusalem and was praying at the temple, he fell into a trance and saw the Lord speaking to him. And God said, "Quick, leave Jerusalem immediately, because the people here will not accept your testimony about me," says God. Paul said, "Lord, these people know that I went from one synagogue to another to imprison and beat those who believe in you. And when the blood of your martyr, Stephen, was shed, Paul stood there giving his approval and guarding the clothes of those who were killing Stephen. And God said, 'Go, and I will send you to the Gentiles.'" And a martyr is a person killed for their faith in Jesus or for their testimony for him. But nowadays, martyr can mean anything. But originally it meant, dying for God. Or dying for your belief system, like dying for whatever you believe in. The crowd listened until he said this about Stephen being killed by them. So then they shouted and said, "He was not fit to live, and the earth should be rid of him." As they shouted, throwing off their cloaks, flinging dust into the air, the commander ordered that Paul be taken into the barracks. And again, barracks where the soldiers, are housed and where they sleep and live. This was an extra measure of protection for Paul from the people in the city that was threatening his life. And God was using the commander and the soldiers to protect Paul, because even though God warned Paul not to go, Paul went anyway. God, still was like, okay, well, he still wanted to protect him. So he used the commander and the soldiers to protect Paul. So the commander directed Paul to be flogged and interrogated to find out why the people were shouting like that. And of course, being flogged means being beat or whipped with a rod or a whip. And interrogation is when you're asked questions aggressively and closely to get an answer to something. As the soldiers stretched Paul out to flog him, Paul said to the centurion standing there, "Is it legal for you to flog a Roman citizen who hasn't even been found guilty?" The centurion reported it to the commander that Paul was a Roman citizen. The commander asked Paul, "Was it true?" And Paul said yes. The commander says he had to pay a lot of money for his citizenship. Paul says he was born there. The interrogation immediately stopped because the people to do it got scared and immediately withdrew. The commander was alarmed when he realized he put a Roman citizen in chains. So now he could get in trouble with his boss. So again, God was, saving Paul. So it was God that put it in Paul to say that, to keep them from hitting him and like flogging him and beating him, The commander wanted to know exactly why Paul was being accused by the Jews. So the next day he released Paul, ordered the chief priests and all the members of the Sanhedrin to assemble together. And he brought Paul and had him stand before them all. And that's the end of chapter 22. As I said, I wanted to keep this short, so I'm going to stop it right because we're at the 25-minute mark. But that's why it's always important to obey God. You know I've gotten situations where I should have obeyed God and I didn't. I did my own thing, but God still ended up protecting me and keeping me safe. So I could feel like, well, I could kind of feel Paul, like he just wanted to go out and do, I guess, what he wanted to do, but at least it wasn't a bad thing he wanted to do. He wanted to go and then talk about God and preach about God to people. But Jerusalem wasn't a safe place because of the Jews there was very murderous, vicious, If you didn't follow their rules, their laws to the T, they would stone you, But so I totally get where Paul's coming from. I can't judge him because I can't judge nobody. But I understand where he was coming from, like, but he shouldn't have did it because it was wrong. He should have obeyed God. But I understand, like, I've did things where I know God was like, Teresa, don't do that. Teresa, ignore this person. Teresa, don't engage with this person. But then it's like the flesh in me be like, you gotta tell this person off. You do this, and you gotta do this, or just other things too, like stuff, that just other things that I know I shouldn't be doing, but then I'll do them. But then God always ended up protecting me in the end, because, I still got stuff I gotta do for God, But I always obey God. I've always learned that, when I don't obey God, things don't work out for me like it should, work out. Like, it'll work out, but then, it's like, I hear God say, well, you should have obeyed me. Like, and then there's other times, where God has been really working on me with my anger, and like not letting, just not letting people get to me to where I come out of character, but yeah, so I've been working on that and God has been helping me with that. But we all have things we gotta work on. Just can't. Nobody's perfect, so just have to work on things. But I have improved. I can walk away from things, which I've always been able to walk away from people, like when they bother me. But I'm a true, like, I guess I'm not, I wouldn't tell people like get all into astrology and stuff, but I'm a true Cancer. Like, like I have to say I'm true to my sign. Like, we are very, you can poke us for a long time, but then eventually we'll snap on you, and then we'll look like the crazy ones when we snap. Because it's like, you've been poking me for like 5 years, and I ain't do nothing. And then all of a sudden I just snap out, But that's a Cancer. That's what Cancers do. Like, that's what we'll snap out on you real quick. And you won't see it coming because you be like, I was poking this heifer for 5 years. She ain't hit me back. She ain't talk. She ain't say nothing back to me. She ain't talk. She ain't do nothing. And then all of a sudden just snap. So, yeah, that's something I have to work on. I gotta, not just just do that to people, you know. Just because somebody, you know, want to be ignorant to me don't mean that I have to match energy, you know. I'm learning to rise above. Rise above energy, you know. Which I've always been one to like rise above energy, but then and just not let people bother me. But then there's just always just people, I don't know, it kind of reminds me of like when in high school, like when I was in high school, like it'd be some people that thought they could say stuff to me or do stuff to me because I was quiet, and then I snap out on them like, no, you're not, you know, I whoop your ass. And then they learn to back off of me, you know. It's like, and I'm still that way, that even though I'm older, I got a lot more patience now, you know. I don't react off of first reactions. Like, I don't react the first time you call me your name. But if you keep doing it, like, over time, then yeah, it's gonna be like, yeah, I gotta say something back to you, because who you think you is, you know. It's like, it's this type of thing. But I'm still working on that, just not responding at all, like, to people that are negative, you know. Because I got too much favor going on in my life, and God's blessed me beyond measure, you know. And I could literally say, like, God literally has blessed me with favor, you know. Because there have been, you know, there have been like times, like a long time ago, I'll say like in my 20s, you know, I'm 40 now, but in my 20s, there would be like times where like I didn't have, like, if I didn't have a job or money or something like that, but some kind of way, God always made sure that I had everything that I needed, you know. Like, I would get money, I would get checks out of nowhere. People saying they owe me, you know. But that's like when you, because I was devoted to God, you know, even in my, you know, 20s. I would say I started my devotion to God. Well, my devotion to God started young. It started at 10, and but it got stronger. My devotion got stronger when I got in my 20s. When I got 18, and then when I got in my 20s, my prayer life, my belief system kind of just, it got stronger, and I started to get tested more. But that's okay, because if you don't get tested, if you're not disciplined, that means God is giving you over to a reprobate mind, which means he's giving you over to Satan. So if you're being tested, if you're going through trials and tribulations, that's actually a good thing. Because and then no, now trials and tribulations don't last for long. Trials and tribulations, they'll last, but it's not a forever thing. So if you're a person who's constantly having like bad luck, sinus is messing with me. It's about to snow, and I can feel it, because my sinus is starting to mess with me. But whenever it's about to rain or snow, my sinus will start messing with me. But anyway, we are at the 34 mark. I tried to talk a little to like